Welcome to Our Future is Kind, a podcast exploring how we build the future we want to live in, one kind act at a time. I'm your host, Michael Neece, president of Our Future is Kind, and your companion in conversations about kindness, leadership, connection, and courage. Each week, I sit down with thoughtful leaders, creators, and bridge builders to explore what a healthier, more humane future could look like, and the choices it takes to build it. These are honest conversations about purpose, culture, curiosity, and what it really means to show up for one another at work, in our communities, and in everyday life. Along the way, we'll unearth practical ideas, small but meaningful acts, and questions worth sitting with, because building what's next is a choice. So let's dive in. Schuknecht helps entrepreneurs and businesses transform their vision into impact. As the founder of 2 Mile High Marketing and host of the podcast Beyond the Bestseller, she works with entrepreneurs, authors, and business owners to turn their ideas into impact. She's also one of the driving forces behind the Do More Good movement. Schuknecht, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm super excited to be here.
Glad to have you on the program. And I just told the audience who you are, but let's give you a fair shot. What makes you, you?
What makes me, me? Love that. Michael, I've been thinking a lot about just you and your general message and, the future is kind, right? And I think so what makes me, me is the unique, career path that I've had and the skill set that I have that has led me to where I am now. I think that we so often take our own experience for granted and we think everyone knows what we know, right? But the journey that I've been on the last couple of years has led me to fully understand we each have our own, what I call it is your authority X factor. We each have our own authority X factor, that thing that makes us different. And so that question really stands out to me as, what makes me different, right? The things that I have gone through in my career have led me to this place where I started my business a couple of years ago and am uniquely positioned to serve people in the way that I do because I have that experience working in marketing, working in publishing, and helping thought leaders build their thought leadership platform.
So you're helping other people find their voice and help them become more visible. Is that an accurate kind of summary?
Yes. And the funny thing when you say it that way, when I started my business, one of the things I talk about is being the person behind the person. I felt like for 20 years in my career, I was the person behind the person. I was the person that a CEO would rely on to get everything done. They had this vision. They wanted to accomplish certain things in their company. And I was the person that did it all behind the scenes and was completely hidden. And when I decided to start my business, I'm doing that same thing for my clients, right? Helping them accomplish their goals, helping them gain visibility. But I had to put myself in that same spot. Like I had to put myself in the spotlight in order to grow my business. I needed people to know who I was and what I was doing, right? And that's super uncomfortable for people. For me, it was anyways, Some people are a little more open to being in the spotlight, but I never was. And that was something that I had to learn to get more comfortable with.
Well, you can't help people if they don't know about you, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful, the work that you're doing. Tell me, how did you get involved in the Do More Good movement? What is that all about?
Yeah. So part of what my company does for our clients is help them get speaking events, right? So that's one part of what we do. But the Do More Good movement has an annual conference called the ROI of Why. And I had discovered that conference when doing research for one of my clients and applied for one of my clients to speak at it. Well, that put me on their email list. And a few weeks later, they sent out an email and they were looking for somebody to help coordinate their thought leader series. So they have a thought leader series, lunch and learn series in Zoom every week. And they just wanted a volunteer to do that. And I was like, I'll volunteer because that just fits perfectly with what I do with my clients. And also, just being a part of that organization and getting to know more thought leaders, just a great networking opportunity for me. So I joined and so I now coordinate the weekly thought leader series. Like I said, it's every week. It's a lunch and learn. So it's 1 hour and we bring in guests like you to talk about topics that are of interest to purpose-driven companies. So purpose-driven companies and organizations, people who are out there doing good in the community with their company. It's kind of a loose term as far as doing more good, but the idea is companies who are purpose-driven and really trying to make a difference in the world.
So why does that matter? I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I just thought businesses provided us with really cool cereal or really neat toys or some sort of device that would help us communicate better or travel better or something like that. Why do we care if they're doing good?
Yeah. Well, having worked in a couple of places where that wasn't the focus, I think it's for humanity, for, to help people in general. I mean, there's all, like I said, it's a loose term, right? Like how we're doing good. So maybe it's for the environment, maybe it's for, for people in general. But, so many people, I see so many people, when I'm scrolling my social media, whatever, who are just like miserable in their jobs, right? And, if we can provide a better environment for people, help them learn how to balance life and work better, how to, help their community, how to give back, all of these things that we can do for a better future, right? So the theme of your podcast is, how to have a better future for everyone. And we have to be intentional about that if we want to create a better future, that it's not just about being in business and making money, but it's about how we're contributing to the world around us, right? And making it a better place in whatever way that looks like for us.
Yeah, I feel that matters as well. Obviously, from the theme of the podcast, I definitely also think it's important that we are voting with our feet. We are voting with our dollars. We are in some way trying to support organizations that are purpose-driven to the benefit of humanity, not to the benefit of a small number of shareholders. Have you ever found that you are misaligned, or in your past lives, that you've been misaligned with whatever corporation that you're working for? And if so, how do you resolve that?
Yeah. So in one of the companies where I've worked, the environment was very much driven by, it was just all about the revenue, all about the, the money that we were bringing in, the profit. I mean, that was the thing that, the company owners would talk about all the time, and workers in a company don't care about your profit. I mean, they care about the job that they're doing, right? But if, if the focus is on profit, you're losing people in that. And there was no focus on the culture, the environment, making this a great place to work. None of that was there. I also felt very misaligned in a future role where I was in a corporate environment. It was the first time for me, and learned that was not where I needed to be.
Right.
And I was just having a conversation yesterday with somebody where that came up, where it's like, it's part of, corporations have to create structure. They have to create rules. They have to, it's in order to keep everything moving and everyone on the same page. Like, I get it. It was not a good fit for me. Right. Like, and so I felt that misalignment in my work there as well.
Yeah, well, certainly that's something I've encountered in a few different industries where I've worked, and a few different companies where I've worked. And it's always the ones that I know are putting their money where their mouth is, where they're really saying, here are our core values, and here's how we treat everybody internal to the company. And here's our purpose in existing and how we are serving others. Like, those are the companies that you could sign me up for all day long.
Yeah. And it's not just about having those core values, because that's the thing that gets me sometimes, is companies will have these core values, they say these things, right? But then that's not what people are actually feeling in the environment, right? And so I had that experience where, it's like we're talking about these, these core values all the time, but my lived experience working in this company is not feeling these things that we're saying, right? So I think it's that intentionality around, it's great to have those words on the wall and to have everyone, cheering for those core values, but you also have to really truly believe them and live them out in the way you treat people, in the way that everything is being run, right? It has to be intentional and not just things that we say and don't do.
I'm curious about your interest in authors and writing and books. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I spent 10 years in publishing. So I was part of a publishing company. I was the vice president of the company. Yeah. 10 years of working with authors, kind of say indirectly, right? Because I was running the company. I wasn't hands-on with authors necessarily. But when I left that space, what I noticed over the next few years, even though I was no longer in publishing, people were coming to me because of my experience, what they knew of me, right? They saw me as that kind of thought leader, like this person knows publishing, right? This person knows book writing. And so I had so many people coming to me that I was like, I'm going to lean into this and I'm going to just kind of keep working with authors. Like, so I kind of always did that as a side kind of, I say a side hobby, not a hustle, because I wasn't really making any money, but just kind of more for fun. Once in a while I do some author coaching. I would help somebody with publishing their book. I continued having a blog. So I was writing a blog about book marketing and kind of building my own following through that and becoming known in that space for my expertise there. And so, so it's been a part of my world my entire career, even though the last, 8 or 9 years, I haven't been in publishing, but I've been working with authors. Well, then when I started my company a couple years ago, my focus was on thought leadership, helping people build their thought leadership platform. But part of that is having a book in hand, right? And so instead of looking at myself as working with all authors, I got a little more specific about working with nonfiction authors who are writing books that are related to professional development, leadership, business type books, that kind of thing, because that really again, going back to my authority X factor, it was like taking my unique skill set and the experiences that I'd had, what I had learned in my career and how I can best help people. That was what, that really stood out to me. And so that's a kind of one of the things that we do in my business is helping with the ghostwriting piece and going to publish. So, and I'll tell you, Michael, people will come to me and they want to know about publishing, right? And I'm biased on the self-publishing side. I truly believe that everyone can publish their own book. You don't have to wait for a traditional publisher. You don't necessarily need that backing. And I'm very verbal about that because when people come to me and they're like, can you help me get a traditional publisher? I'm like, probably not. I can steer you in a direction, right? But that's not typically the way that I work with people. I'm like, I'll hop on Amazon KDP with you and show you what you need to do and how to set it up. And it's your book and you don't have to pay anyone to do that. So that's my
tremendous. Yeah, no, that's tremendous. Helping people find their voices and really filter those into those book experiences. Having been through a couple of different pathways to publication in the past few years, I think the service that you're providing is really, really helpful just to give people that guidance so that they know that they can actually do it. Yeah, I mean, part of writing a book is having the idea, I should write one, but the rest of it is having that sense of, I have a guide. I have this great person named Kelly who's going to guide me and help me with these pieces that I don't know anything about. So it's not scary. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a great way to say it, because one of the clients that I'm working with right now, he was on that fence. Like, I need to get a traditional publisher, and then he started talking to other people. It's like he had been working with me doing the ghostwriting, right? But he had been talking with other people and interviewed enough people who had published in different ways. And he finally came back and he said, you know what? I don't need a traditional publisher because I have you. And I was like, right, I know. No, for some people, it really, really matters. Like, they are very dead set on, I need to be traditionally published if I'm going to be legitimate. Like, that's in their head. They think that. And if that's you, not you, Michael, but you as a listener, go for it. Pursue that. If that's really, really important to you, pursue it. But if the real purpose for getting your book out there is to get your message out there, and maybe it's a tool for your business to help grow your business, then don't worry about that. You don't need to. You mentioned, I know, Michael, you're the host and I'm the interviewee, but I am curious about your different paths to publishing.
Oh, so, I've had a long time affiliation with Moorhead Planetarium in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Okay.
They had a story that has just never been told about astronauts coming there for training for 16 years, all the big names you could think of. And I said, well, I would really like to write that book for you because I'm intimately familiar with the details and all of the, So they said, yes, we will publish it, and we will partner with UNC Press, who will help give us a little bit of advice, a little bit of guidance, and then we'll distribute the book. And then they wanted me to run point on everything. And so that was fun. I got to pick my own illustrator. It's a children's book. So that was one of the paths to publication. And what I found was that, it felt a little bit official, but also I was the guy kind of running the show and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was asking a lot of questions and it worked out fine. And I have, UNC Press's name associated with it. So it sounds like really official. And it cost me a ton of money. and a lot of anxiety and a lot of effort on my part to get that book published because I had to pay for the printing costs and for the illustrator and then any kind of marketing. Well, this was at the beginning of COVID, so no marketing really happened. So that was one pathway. And then another was just pure straight up self-publishing. And so I worked with a hybrid group that helped me with all of the editing and the cover designs and making it, clicking the button in Amazon to make it light up. And so that was, again, it cost me a ton of money, but it was really like, I've loved both of those publishing pathways. And then the most recent has been with Brave Healers, where it is multi-author book publishing. And so you are essentially spreading out the cost to 25 different people on the book. And then you're getting out there into the publishing world with 24 other best friends who are also marketing like crazy on their networks. And that has worked really, really well. And it has been a lot cheaper and a lot more fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great testament to, like, there is no one way to do it. There's no one right way, right? So people think that, but the reality is there's so many different ways that you can get your book published, whether it's through a hybrid publisher like that, or just going on to Ingram Spark or Amazon KDP yourself and doing it, or like doing it a collaboration project. I mean, there's just so many ways. So I just tell people, don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Just pick a path and go with it.
And getting your voice out there is really fun because, especially when I was part of that group project, the multiple author work, it was just really fun reading all of their chapters and understanding, the different approaches that you can have to one topic. And then, the end result is that you have the reader who's like looking at it as if it's a box of chocolates, and they're like, well, I'll try this chapter. And well, that wasn't quite my flavor, and try another chapter and go, oh my gosh, I've needed to hear this for years. And before you know it, it's just really gratifying hearing all the voices actually making it out there, because they need to be out there. I mean, if there's any one time in history where we really, really need to be thoughtful about crafting the future, it's right now. Yeah. It is right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, if you're willing, I'd like to take you on a little thought experiment.
All right.
Okay. So, Kelly, we are going to hop into a time machine. We're going to travel forward 100 years. And as I'm maneuvering the controls, I say to you, Kelly Schuknecht, we have done all the right things. We did everything right. And when we get out of the time machine, it's going to be the ideal future in 2126. When I open the doors and you step outside, what are you looking for to see if I was telling you the truth?
So what I would be looking for is more women in leadership. I'm passionate about women in the workplace, Michael, because you mentioned earlier my podcast, Beyond the Bestseller. In my podcast, I feature female authors of nonfiction books. And the reason I wanted to be focused on women is because I think that, I am passionate about women's messages and getting those messages out there. I wish I had the stat for you. I've shared it on LinkedIn in the past, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But the number of women, or the percentage of women in leadership roles, is shocking, right? Like, so when it gets to like C-suite positions, and if I can find that, Michael, I'll send it to you so you can put it in the show notes at least. But I read that number a few years back when I was on a leadership team, and I was the only woman in the room with 7 men. Mm-hmm. And it resonated with me because I was like, there are very few women. There's a lot of women in the workplace. So there's a number that shares, like, it's like the workforce is like 50 to 60 or 50 to 60% women, right? But when you get to the leadership roles, it's a lot less, like a lot fewer women in those places.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think that it's nobody's fault necessarily, right? It's a thing that happens. I think the world has changed a lot in the last 20 years. But when I was having babies 20 years ago, there was a lot of pressure for me to stay home with my kids. And I didn't. And I didn't because I couldn't, not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. So the pressure wasn't helpful, right? Like, the pressure wasn't helpful because I didn't have a choice. And 20 years later, I find myself being the only woman in the room on a leadership team, right?
Wow.
And so some of it is we self-select out, women self-select out of the workforce. I also think things have changed a lot. Like I don't hear women today, young women, complain about the pressure to stay home like I remember it the way that it was 20 years ago. I see my daughter, who is 21, and I see her like just gung-ho, ready to get a job, ready to get into, her career. Like she's finishing college. She is driven. And I want a place for her 20 years from now where there are more women in leadership roles, where she is not the only woman at the executive leadership table, that there are more women running companies. The other thing I've seen in the last 2 years since I started my business is I go out and talk about developing your leadership, thought leadership platform. And I realized pretty early on that so many women were interested in what I was talking about. They have started their own businesses. They're solopreneurs. They are consultants, but they're running these very small businesses, or they're in a role where when I say being the person behind the person, so many women go, that's me, right? Because they find themselves in roles where they're answering, no offense, Michael, but they're answering to a man, or they're starting their own small business consulting, and they don't visualize themselves as the owner of some multi-million-dollar company. Women see themselves as so much smaller than really what they're capable of doing in their career. And I want the future to be where more women are embracing their own capabilities and not relying on men in leadership to decide their path in their career, but they're taking ownership of that and really intentionally building their own career path.
I endorse this future. I really hunger for this future. I did read a stat, it has to be 7 or 8 years ago, that there are fewer female CEOs in America than there are male CEOs named John.
Yeah, I have heard that one as well. I mean, we do need to pull together some numbers and put it in the show notes, but it's true. I mean, that when you look at some of the stats, it's shocking. Like, it's shocking. And knowing my own career path, I'm like, is it? Like, I mean, so many people told me when I had babies, like, oh, you're going to be like, I have like these memories of things people said to me that were so hard for me to take back then, because it was like, I didn't have the choice. I had to work. Right. And one of the gals that I worked with at that time said, I would never leave my kids with somebody else. And I was like, well, thank you. But like, I don't have the choice,
Right.
Well, I was very fortunate when I was pregnant with my second, who's now 18, that I was able to find a remote job, which was not a thing 18 years ago. Like, that was very uncommon. And so another thing I'm deeply passionate about is remote jobs, remote possible, what do you call it? Remote forward jobs, or, whatever, like jobs that give women that flexibility. And that also has changed so much in the last 6 years, right? Where they're just, even jobs that have called people back to the office are still offering way more flexibility than they used to. But I truly believe that the reason I was able to build my career the way that I was because I worked remotely for 18, almost 19 years now. And so I was able to be home with my kids and have a career and stay in the workforce, where other people, it was like, it was one or the other. Right. And I was able to do both. And so I think having remote, flexible jobs is really, really important for women to be able to stay in the workforce.
Yeah. We need more female voices at higher levels for about 1 billion reasons. But the one that always occurs to me is that there is no way that somebody can convince me that a person's anatomy makes them better or less qualified for any position in corporate America. I just don't believe it. Having a man in charge of a company or a woman in charge of a company, the only real difference is the personality of the person who's there and the choices that they are going to make. And if 51% of the population is female, we need 51% of the leaders to be female as well. It just makes sense to me.
Right. Yeah. There's also, dang it, I wish I had my stats book. I need to create a stats book so I have these numbers to throw out in these conversations. But there's also stats that show that companies that are led by women are actually more profitable. And that if women tend to not get to those roles, but the companies that have those women in leadership, at least, there's a different nature to the culture, the way things are, that women just are different in the way that they run things and the way they, treat people. And that has an impact on business, right? So I'm not saying that every company needs to be like led by, have a CEO that's a woman, but having the women's voices in leadership can really actually make the company more profitable in the long run, that you're getting different perspectives, different opinions, different sensitivities, just different things like that. And yeah, I think that you said earlier, it's not any one person's fault. I think a lot of it is just, the way that things have evolved over time. But we're in that next evolution, right? Like we're getting better at allowing women to be in the workplace and to have these career paths and not guilting them into staying home, or giving them options where they can stay in a career and raise a family. And I think all of those things are going to make a big difference 20 years from now. What was our, where did our time machine take us? How many years?
2126.
Okay.
100 years from now.
Okay, 100 years from now. So we should see a massive difference by that time.
Hopefully it feels like a whole different planet by that time.
Well,
and you did mention that it's helpful to have more women's voices in more rooms, more discussions. I think it's also really important to point out, you've also got to have really good listeners in those rooms, because the voices, when they are present, are not always heard.
Right. Yeah. And so speaking of being in, like I said, being the only woman at the table, there were times where I would say things and I would get shut down, and it's hard to describe, I was working with great people, like great men, like, but there's just something about that. I don't know if it's the listening. I don't know if it's the, I don't know, but there was something very subtle going on where there was times where I would, like my voice would not be heard or would not be allowed in some, on some topics. And, I was always like trying to assess, like, why is this happening? And some of it's, I'm also a more quiet natured person. Like I'm not going to, be loud in the room. Right. And so it's a combination of things, right? But I do think that women feel that too. They feel shut down. They feel like they're not heard. And so then what does that lead to? Talking less and, speaking up less, right? And and those things, I think, but the more if you have more women in the room, that's just opening it up to more people who are aware of what's going on. Maybe more people who are saying, oh, hey, let's give Kelly a chance to give her opinion on this. Or, well, actually, Kelly made a good point. Let's go back to that, just different ways of communicating.
So for those of you who are listening in right now, who are allies, please take it as a point of action to listen well and to point your fingers back to the person who had a great idea at the table. It can be anybody, but if there's an idea that gets trampled and you know that it has legs under it, you know that it's a great idea, you need to go ahead and spotlight that person who had the idea, not just repeat it and act like it was yours, but to actually point back to that person and say, Kelly had this amazing idea. Can you say it again for the whole group? Because I think we need to listen to this one. That's the way to get real change to happen.
Yeah. I love that point, Michael, that you just made about not just like basically taking credit for it. Because I do think that happens a lot with women, and they feel like, okay, it was my idea and I said it, and then somebody else jumps on it and now it's their, they get the credit or they get the, recognition for it. And
right.
Yeah. That happens.
Yeah. No, it's, corporate politics can be a little messy, but, I think a big piece of it is living our values at all times, even when there's something to lose at the table. Because if you're thinking in terms of, if I lose this opportunity to pretend this idea is mine, what you've actually lost by then pretending that it's yours is integrity, believability. There's the sense of allyship that is utterly destroyed because everybody at the table, whether they say it or not, they recognize that that's what just happened. Mm-hmm. Whether they were the person whose idea was stolen or it was just somebody else at the table, they now know that you're not a safe person. And so I think living our values is really, really important in all states. Partly because of the outcome, but mostly just because there is a right thing to do at the table, is to live those values.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could talk about this all day, but let me ask you this part 2 to the question, right? Yeah. We've gone into the future. Women are in more leadership positions. And I told you while we were navigating to 100 years in the future that we did all the right things. What are all those right things, Kelly? How do we build this future?
Well, I think, I think we talked about some of that already, just the helping support women, right, in those rooms. So when you're at the table, listening, being aware, right? I think some of it is also allowing women to make choices about their career paths without guilting them. I actually struggle on the other side of that now, and I'll be 100% honest about that. When women choose to stay home now, like they're into their career a little bit, and then they have a baby, and then they're like, oh, I'm gonna stay home. I'm like, don't do it, don't, and I have to fight that because I'm like, it's okay. They could choose whatever path they want, right? And so supporting women in whatever choice they are making for their career. But I also think, management, so there's more of that middle management piece though of, are you promoting women at the same rate that you're promoting men? Are you giving women the same opportunities that you're giving men? Sometimes men are louder about, about wanting promotions, wanting raises, they have higher expectations for their pay. There's still a large gender pay gap in our society. Some of that is because men expect more sometimes, right? And are you giving raises based on what people are coming to you asking for? Or are you looking at it and giving people fair opportunity as far as their pay, their promotions, things like that? Yeah. And I think, and I don't advocate for, if we have a leadership team of 6, we need it to be half and half, men and women. Like I'm not advocating for that in any way. I think it starts way further back. It starts with those like entry-level positions and the opportunities for advancement. And it's not about just trying to make everything equal at the top. Like that's not what I don't believe in that. I believe in starting and looking at like systemically what's happening to lead to that end result. So yeah, so I think those are some of the ways that I could see us being more mindful of it now to start changing what it's going to look like 100 years from now.
I love it. I love it. And my hope is also that as people open new positions in leadership, that they actively recruit, they actively find people of all different kinds of backgrounds and say, this position is open. We really want you to consider applying for this position. Because I think, if you just use traditional methods of advertising an open role, it is going to be to the advantage of a select, thin slice of society where they're going to be able to find that position easily and jump in and apply for it. I think we need to actively look to, creative sources of new, really cool coworkers that we can bring into roles. So, all right, wonderful. Well, I also would love to help participate in building that future with you and coming up with these new actions that we can take. Let's think about our current situation here in America and in the world in the year 2026. And we don't have to dig into the details, but I really want to talk about this. Sometimes things feel overwhelming. They feel impossible. We feel powerless potentially. Do you ever feel like that? And if you do, what are the ways that you find inspiration again, that you seize your power, that you can find ways of being extra kind, maybe to yourself, but also to others?
Yeah. I mean, this right now, it's a rough week as we're recording with everything going on politically. For me, right or wrong, I don't know, maybe it's not a good thing, but I have to avoid the news. I can't, I know what's going on in the world because you're going to see it, right? Like I'm a big fan of TikTok. I'm on TikTok. I can, I'm gathering enough of what's happening that that's it. That's all I need to, it's like I'll skip the video, but I got it. I know what's happening. But I cannot sit and watch the news because I cannot sit in what's happening right now. That's how I protect myself from it. Again, like I said, right or wrong, some people might have the opinion that you should know what's going on in the world. And I agree, but also I can't live in that. I cannot live in that space. And I think the more I can protect myself from the feelings of what's happening, the better I can just be for other people and, being able to show up and not be just in the feeling of it all.
Right. Right. I love that advice. I only look for 15 minutes every Sunday at an amalgamated output that I have AI assemble for me. I have AI go to multiple different sources like Al Jazeera and New York Times and just a whole bunch of different sources that are global. and then I have it filter to me the top 10 stories
Okay.
that I should know about, and then the top 10 ways that I can actually affect things. Because I think you are right. It is so easy to get overwhelmed with the news that's coming in. So I applaud that answer, trying to avoid getting overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is my current way of dealing. My husband is a big news person. He loves, he watches the news all the time. And I'm like, nope, I don't want to, but I'm also very anti-political. So part of it's like, I want to stay out of all of it. And
Sure. Yeah. So are there things that you reach for that get you inspired? Just in general terms, are there books that you've revisited a lot of times?
Yeah. One of the things that I noticed my first year in business, I was so focused on the business, the stress around it, seeing myself differently than I had been in the past. I had been an employee for 20 years, and all of a sudden it's different when you're running your own business. And so I saw that I lost myself in that, I'm a big reader. I read a lot. I typically read 50 to 60 books every year. I think I read 16 in 2025, which is still more than most people, but it felt like I had read nothing. And so I was very intentional this year, or mindful of that, and adding in some practices to get my reading back on track. And I'm not setting any goals as far as I have to read a certain number of books this year, but just adding it back into a little bit of reading time at night before I go to bed. I get up in the morning and do some reading in the morning. I've been making sure that I have some audiobooks ready to go. So right now I'm walking the dog every day and listening to an audiobook while I'm walking, so just things like that get me kind of to clear my head, to think about things outside of just work, and to just give myself my brain some downtime. I don't know that makes me more creative, but it just gives me back some, I think that time is really important, just to have time where your brain is not processing the news, your work, all your to-dos, all the things, right, that we have to do. And so that's kind of my way of, I don't know, it's self-care, I guess, just spending some time in my own head.
That's a great place to be from all accounts. So tell me, Kelly Schuknecht, what is next for you? What are you working on? How can people get into your orbit and maybe get some of your great services?
Well, this is very timely. We talked about publishing, and sometimes people will ask me, do you have your own book? Because I do ghostwriting, and I had not had my own book out there yet. And it was something that I kept thinking, I need to get this done, but it's also I need to do 5 million other things as well. Well, I finally got the draft together back in November last year, went through the beta reader process, went through editing in February, and now my book is with the designer as of the time of this recording. So by the end of this month or so, which we're recording in March, I don't know when this episode comes out, but by the end of March, my book should be coming out. And I am, no surprise, self-publishing. So it will be out pretty quickly once I have the files. So Unlocking Your Authority X Factor is the name of my book. Like I said, publishing hopefully in March. And then in April, I'm launching a course that goes along with that. Both of those are related to personal branding. So helping people who, I mentioned, I help thought leaders in my business. I help business owners develop their thought leadership platform. But one of the things that I noticed was smaller businesses were coming to me. They're really interested in doing what I do, but also they have smaller budgets. And so this was my way of kind of serving that community and having some resources, the book and the course, that can help people who have smaller budgets but want to develop their personal brand, whether they're thinking about leaving a corporate job, or they're wanting to they're a solopreneur consultant that wants to grow their business. This is to help them in that. So those are coming out soon. By the time this episode comes out, the authorityxfactor.com will be live, and that's where you can find out more about the book.
That is fantastic. Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to get my copy, and I hope launch day goes great. Hopefully, you see the sales soar. But I just know that from everything that we've talked about, I know that your intention with the book is to help people. And so thank you for what you're doing in the world.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, Kelly. Well, hey, we appreciate you being on Our Future is Kind. And if you want to continue the conversation, everybody look in the show notes. There's so many things that we were going to put in there, little goodies about statistics and how to get Kelly's new book. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks, Michael.
This episode's kindness challenge.
When someone at the meeting table makes a great point that gets overlooked, be the one who brings it back. Say, I want to return to what so-and-so said. Can you share that again? Credit the idea. Amplify the voice.
Want to stay inspired so you can stay kind?
Kelly stays inspired by protecting daily reading time, not as a goal, but as a habit that returns her brain to itself. Try these. Read a few pages each morning before the day's noise sets in. Even 10 minutes counts. Cue in an audiobook for walks or errands so inspiration travels with you hands-free. Set no numeric target. Just show up for it daily and let curiosity lead.
You've been listening to Our Future is Kind podcast, where building what's next is a choice. Make your next choice a good one and help build the future we want to live in.